Hello and welcome to the November 29th, 2015. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, that's the date here. GCR show with Deb and Sean, also known as Awake-In-3D. And we also have Jennifer here supporting us on the board. And so this is our second official show, and we want to, first of all, extend a warm welcome to everybody and appreciation. We are planning to open up the calls much sooner than we did the last time. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get rocking and rolling here. And that is, as we open up the lines, we're going to ask for everybody that as you share the information of who you are, to please only share your first name. And you can share your location, but because this is being recorded, it'll go out to wherever we don't know, and so we just, for the sake of privacy, want to encourage you to maintain some privacy. And then the other thing too is that as we open up the queue for the Q&A, we do not know who is on the other end of that call. So we are just going to ask everyone to be very, not only patient, but also be understanding that this is how it goes when it's live. That there's going to, there's people that we don't know who is there. We don't know what questions are going to be asked or the things that are going to be said. So we're going to ask everyone to be responsible and accountable for your communication, as well as for the engagers and the listeners to be patient with all of that. Okay, so Sean, would you like to add anything to the intro with the housekeeping of all this?
Nope, I think you got it.
Okay, so now just to give a little bit of intro in regards to why we're even doing this call and this show is, and to also just give a bit of an overview of the expansion of where we're intending to go with this. Both Sean and I have been involved in this situation, which is now very, it's like we're referring to it as the GCR RV. I for 5 years. Sean, I think you've been, about 7?
7, yep.
Yeah, 7 years. Okay. So one of the things that is really, really important for people to have some awareness about is that this investment opportunity or this shift of finances or this reset, however you're looking at it, we believe and feel that it's very important for you to be looking at it from different perspectives, and also from a global perspective, that this is not just about currencies that are being revalued and resetting of global infrastructure, that there is a much bigger hand at play here that is really bringing to light the matrix, what I refer to as the enslavement matrix, or the deception, the duality reality, or the deception reality. And what is playing out right now is a very behind the scenes double standard and matrix that has been very effectively put in place to keep humanity, and I refer to this also as the designed assault against humanity's awakening, to keep humanity in a very controlled and programmed experience within a construct within this matrix. And that this GCR is the tipping point for us to actually transcend that enslavement matrix. And before we can transcend it, for it to actually be revealed. And this is why one of the reasons that what I wanted to talk about tonight was to go back in this time machine and only just do a very, very quick overview of some of the history. Very quick. and just to touch upon some key points, that it's very...
Sorry for the interrupt. This is based on the fact that a lot of people were asking, right? From the last show, you got a lot of emails and questions, and I think sometimes we all forget that some people are fairly new to this, and when they hear some of the things that are thrown around, they really don't have a perspective or a background. So, yeah, I think this is good because this is our intro to the newbies show, right? Exactly.
And because Sean and I are aware that we and the team that are around us are really here to be transitional, to support in a transitional, in this transition, and I'm going to say transitional way showers. That in this situation with the GCR, that it's very important for people to connect the dots. And I touched upon something in our last show where I was saying, I went down the rabbit hole back in 2010, at the end of 2010 when I got involved with this. And I think it's very, very important, no matter where you are in your knowledge base at this point, to actually go down that rabbit hole. And I'm kind of being fun here, but I was saying, to be smart bunnies. But this rabbit hole is imperative if you are interested in transcending this deception reality and this enslavement matrix. It's actually really important for you to understand and to be able to connect the dots of all of the things that have been going on behind the scenes for a very long time, so that you can actually have the level of discernment that's necessary to navigate through what I actually have been told by my guides is what we're about to experience on the planet are some very, very traumatic and dramatic upheavals. And in order to have the perspective of, in order to have an expanded perspectives of this upheaval, it's actually important to understand what has been hidden and the way that the quote-unquote wool has been pulled over our eyes. And this will support you in having the perspective that as these things are revealed in the mainstream, which so much is not, many of us know much of what is happening is not revealed in the mainstream. But that as that does occur, that we can then be responsible for having an expanded awareness and having perspectives that, okay, this has to happen. This is just an example of a thought process. Okay, I can see how this has to happen in order for ... to actually be revealed and to occur for the betterment of humanity. Okay, so I really wanted to just set the context and the tone because we're going to create the content. We're going to create some the content and the context here, but like we said, we're only going to give you like crumbs at this moment because this is a huge subject. And I know for me, when I started going down this rabbit hole, I spent thousands of hours researching this to understand what the hell was going on and to understand about fiat currencies and things that we're going to touch upon here. So, okay, so Sean, let's get into the time machine part of this.
Okay.
All right, so why don't, if you wouldn't mind, if you would actually start with the, okay, let me just say one more thing. So one of the important things in this whole timeline of all this is the JFK stuff, and the JFK's, what his intention on this planet was when he was here in physicality. We're not going to go back there, though. Why don't we start for the newbies? Let's start with the Dinar, because that really, I think for many of us, that was the kingpin of what started many of us on this trek.
Okay. Yeah, I think a commonly held perception by people who are trying to connect the dots are that the GCR or the RV, which are commonly used together, started with the Iraqi dinar, right? But we know that a currency reset or an attempt by various leaders across the world, including, most significantly for the U.S. was JFK, in trying to get the world off of the fiat currency system, which is really just a debt-based spiral, right? So the GCR really goes back way before the dinar came on the scene. And the dinar, after it started to become public because of the internet, and many of us are found out about it, whether it's last year, last month, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even some people, it spread really quick. And so the public, as we call it, Dinar Land public, became a part of the overall picture. And I believe it was decided with the architects, I call them the architects of the GCR plan, that the Iraqi dinar, given that so many people were beginning to collect it and hold it, would become a key part of the cornerstone of the global currency reset. And it was decided that the dinar would be a truly gold-backed currency. I believe it is still slated to be 100% asset-backed with not just oil. That's the oil credit thing, but in terms of the currency, being a gold-backed currency, which could be a cornerstone for many other countries around the world to hold dinar treasuries, sovereign treasuries of different countries, to hold dinar as part of their basket of foreign currencies, or what's called FX in the financial world, foreign exchange currencies. And that's how the dinar really came on the scene. But for people who have just really been in the dinar world and focused on the Iraqi dinar or the VND or others, they're really part of the GCR rather than the GCR being a part of the RV, right? So
right.
That so I don't want to get too convoluted here. So that
let's just touch upon the situation with 9/11 and how this ties in.
Yeah, actually, maybe a lot of people don't realize that the original main plan that was really started getting traction with JFK, because he did want to put the United States on a gold standard. Remember, we didn't get off the gold standard just in 1971. That was the official death nail when Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard. He was told to do that. And but before that, since the inception of the Federal Reserve banking system, or what's called the central banking system, which was led by the Fed back in 1913, that was really we were being weaned off the gold standard in many countries, over that 100 years leading up to now. And 71 was just the official kind of public announcement. Hey, we're completely decoupled from any gold backing of the U.S. dollar in terms of the Treasury, right? And so that is pretty much how this came about and got us where we are now. And leading up to 9/11, right before the towers were hit, for anyone that wants to research this, we won't go into the details, but just search on the internet for the third tower, 9/11, the third tower. There were three towers, three whole buildings that came down, and the third tower was actually where all of the computer systems and the currency algorithm systems that were going to establish the U.S. part and perhaps the global part in putting the U.S. back on the gold standard, as well as many other financial corrections in the banking system and things of that nature. That was in tower number 3. It was a smaller building, but it came down while the other two buildings caught all the attention. The third tower came down not by any means, but that was when the GCR was completely put on, was taken
demolished,
out of
literally.
reality. Right. It was
right.
it was defeated. So that was the connection with 9/11, and so the GCR really had to be retooled, replanned, leading to where we are now.
Well, and one thing to add to that, and like we keep saying, we're just giving you tidbits right now, and with the one thing just to be aware of also with 9/11 is that there was an announcement. I believe it was Alan Greenspan was set to make an announcement the day of the 9/11 that was going to begin to release monies from different collateral accounts, and this is when the official, what had been set up for many, many, many years, the global abundance for Projects for Humanity were to begin to be released.
The matrix funds, the world, global settlements, all of that. Yep.
Exactly. Now, one thing I just want to add in here is that we're going to build out on my website, wakingupwithdeb.com, we're going to build out a section. If you go there within the next couple of days, there's already a post for these shows, but we're going to go ahead and build out a section that provides links for places for you to go and listen to different people that I at least, and I think, Sean, you'll add to this as well, and the team that's working around us, links of people that we feel are pretty much like in the know of this whole big picture, and for you to also, you as the listener and the engager, to guide you, at least create a bit of a roadmap to guide you down, because we cannot provide you with all of the information. We're giving you here the tidbits. And this situation on an esoteric spiritual perspective with 9/11 is, this is what my guides told me, that the 2001, this is when the gateways for our ascension were supposed to open. All the different portals leading up through the 13 years that we were coming into 2012. And all of that was dismantled. So 9/11 really did a very, not only to the global community, just in regards to moving us into a vibration of fear and survival and lack, especially lack of money. It's also been a lack of love, too. So there's been a very traumatic experience that has occurred since that one particular event. So the money was meant to be released back then, and it's taken this much time to as Sean was saying, to reestablish and to basically pick up the pieces for all the people that are working at the level and behind the scenes that we're not working at. So, Sean, perhaps we now touch upon, because there's a couple things for people to be aware of that I think are important, and that is because this is how I started actually understanding things about the IMF and all the World Bank and all of those things that they don't necessarily teach you in school. These are the kind of things you just have to research and figure out. But we've had now in August of, I remember August 2011, the first time I heard about BRICS. So, Sean, you want to touch upon BRICS and what that stands for and the importance of that and and the expansion of now 2 systems behind the scenes?
Yeah, there's the bottom line is that the West, since the inception of modern day banking and finance, the West has controlled everything, right? I mean, the U.S. has been the hub. You only have to look up and understand what the dollar being, one of the largest world reserve currency, going back to the Bretton Woods Agreement right after World War II, where all international affairs are settled in dollars, and that created a hegemony, right? And that was expanded upon, obviously, through the petrodollar. No energy resources can be transferred from one country to another, or transacted, I should say, without using dollars. Everything has to be settled in U.S. dollars. This allows the U.S. system to export dollars and debt and keeps inflation in balance or low here in the U.S., but it's just exported. The debt is exported out into other countries.
Now, can I jump in?
Yep.
Let me just jump in here. I just want to say something to what you're saying. This is really important to understand, this exporting of debt, because this is one of the reasons why the U.S. is very much disliked by many of the people in the countries around the world. We're not, the facade is we're the heroes, and I say we as, people of the U.S., but what the quote-unquote government has done, which is an illegal corporation actually, which we won't get into here, but what they've done is they've really actually manipulated and controlled. They've become the bullies across the planet. And it has created a very detrimental relationship with many of the people in the countries across the world. So, Sean, I just wanted to add that in.
Exactly. And, the bottom line is when and this leads into the IMF and China and Russia, why China is so important right now in this with the renminbi, which I guess we're waiting for tomorrow, huh?
Yeah, it's a big day right now, big time.
And because in essence, any emerging economy nation around the world that wanted to get in and play with the big boys in the West in the financial system pretty much had to turn over all their natural resources to the West, and particularly to the dollar system. And what would happen is the IMF via the U.S., because the IMF is really run by the United States, the majority of voting power and that type of thing. But people would go in, they are called economic hitmen, and they would go to an emerging nation and make them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they had to sign up for the dollar system. They had to sign up, they had to take out loans to develop their natural resources, whether it's gold, diamonds, oil, natural gas, minerals, agriculture, you name it. And that's how you had to participate. And eventually, whatever they wanted to do in the interest of their own countries would either be decided by powers outside of their country, and that's how the disdain for the Western system led by the U.S. dollar regime became more and more disliked, and as time went on. And this led to the IMF. I think we're going to jump from, say, the middle 2000s now coming into 2010 with the IMF reforms.
Right.
And as the GCR movement was gaining traction behind the scenes with the powers that be, everyone knows it's coming. Of course, the resistance had to be put up by what I call the bad guys, who do not want a change to a gold-backed currency system, an asset-backed currency system, that want to maintain the status quo with the fiat system. The countries saw the change. They wanted to adopt it because they saw freedom in it. That's what the GCR is. It takes the debt slavery not only from people, but sovereign nations and whatnot, to the hegemony of the dollar and that. So one by one, the emerging nations, which officially called themselves, came to be called BRICS. That was named by J.P. Morgan analysts, but what are known as BRICS, they wanted more and more of voting power in the IMF, more control over their destiny, because the U.S. can just veto anything because they have the majority vote. And so this is the disgruntlement that kept rising higher and higher. And, we don't want to get into the whole Middle East, but the very reason we're in Iraq, we're in Syria, we're in Egypt, we're in all of those nations, is really to gain control of the natural resources, make sure we have installed, and make them a part of the dollar fiat, type of system and the economic slavery. And so BRICS became more and more vocal. Other countries signed up behind BRICS, not just Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, but all the countries that were allied with those primary BRICS nations began to get more and more vocal over the years coming to 2010.
Yep.
And they wanted IMF reforms with the voting powers and that type of thing. And, of course, we all know that the U.S. blocked that and still continues to do that today, to the point where BRICS the IMF are, probably about to announce, what we have all come call Plan B, which is, hey, eventually even the biggest bully on the block, if enough people who have been bullied get together, they can force a change, right? They can stop it. And that's why Russia and China get vilified in the U.S. news and that type of thing. It's got nothing to do with what's really going on, what Putin says, what the Chinese premier say, what they're doing. It's really all about, we can't let you come up and challenge the status quo system. That's what the real issue is all about. The rest is just propaganda. So the GCR is linked to all of that and the 2010 reforms that are going to go through, and that leads up to, let's see what happens tomorrow, right? If the renminbi is included in the basket, that should be a watershed moment. I'm not saying it's going to trigger the GCR or the RV, but it's certainly going to be a major part of that and triggering it. I just don't know. I can go both ways on the intel and that type of thing, but I'll sure be happy if we get some major traction tomorrow. And that's really where the whole GCR, the last holdout is the Federal Reserve Bank and we're going to see if that gets a major correction real soon.
Well, and I also was sent a link to an article that was put out by ABC in regards to this IMF announcement for tomorrow. So to me, that is actually mainstream traction that is rather unique in this whole situation that many of us have been watching and participating in the unfoldment of. And one of the things, the 2010 IMF reforms, that's a game changer. And this whole thing in regards to the U.S. holding out all these years it's just the writing has been on the wall all these years once you understand the different players. And so behind the scenes there has been a, well, Sean, you just touched upon saying Plan B. There has been a reorganizing of the different players behind the scenes. And I don't know if we'll ever know, the truth of everything that has been going on. But this is the Plan B. Also now what has occurred, because through these last several years, what's become very obvious is the rigging of the precious metals, the deception upon deception upon deception, where it does not create a level playing. There is no level playing field. So this Plan B is putting into place a new banking system and even a new SWIFT code system that takes it out of the absolute control of the, I'll just refer to as the U.S., right? The Federal Reserve system.
The alternative, right, because the SWIFT system is controlled by the Western banking cartels, so no money can be moved internationally through country to country or bank to bank, or private bank to private bank without going through the SWIFT.
Which
so
is
Plan B
through
included,
New York, right?
Yep. Plan B. Well, SWIFT is based out of I want to say Switzerland or not Belgium, but anyway, in that area, and but it's controlled by via the BIS and the Banking of International Settlements, which is connected to the IMF and the World Bank and that type of thing. They're all just one big brotherhood cartel, right?
Exactly.
So part of Plan B, as the BRICS rose and they said, okay, you guys the bad guys are going to keep throwing out roadblock and after roadblock, we're just going to have to dig down and create an alternative to the SWIFT system, which is called the SIPS.
Yep.
Which has been in testing for a long time, and that's another big secret that doesn't seem to come out. Mm-hmm. Is it really fully functioning? Is it really connected? I believe that part of what's taken us till now in going to the exchanges and redemptions has been, is SIPS really connected to every bank at every level? Is it being blocked? How much does it take to get it connected? We've heard reports over the last few weeks from multiple higher-level sources about these telecommunication interruptions, and whether it's internet or whether it's the telecom systems. Well, I mean, that's how the data is carried, right, to execute international wire transfers. And unless we can get a wire transfer to the banks where we're going to go and initiate our currency exchanges, that's the whole blocking of where we keep saying we're waiting for the funds, and also the funds being connected to the new gold-backed U.S. dollar, right?
Yep.
Not the fiat dollar, but the treasury dollar, which will be gold-backed like the dinar, and then the Babylon 2 software system runs all the algorithms for calculating gold and asset-backed currencies compared to each other, what are called currency pairs. So we're at that point now, right? So I think we've kind of painted a good landscape where it started and brought us right up to where we are now. What's going on with the IMF, the BIS, the bank, the central banking system, the Federal Reserve Bank, and what some of this chatter is that people hear about and get maybe confused with. Well, what do you mean? What funds are we waiting for? I mean, yeah, those funds have to be released, and they're. I'm hoping that the connection with the renminbi being put in the IMF basket, that automatically forces every central bank in the world, which covers 98% of all countries in the world, that will force them to restructure all of their foreign exchange currency reserves.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, which means it dilutes their holdings of U.S. dollars, right? Which to me is a major crack in the dollar hegemony, right? And the other side is, will those currencies now be asset-backed that are part of this new IMF SDR basket, right? So we need those two things to happen. And but I think the key thing is still, is there a delivery vehicle, short of SWIFT,
that's trustworthy,
that is all connected, and it can't be siphoned off, it can't be stolen, it can't be taken by the current bad guys, and the wire transfer gets diverted or it ends up in an account somewhere else, and blah blah blah. So,
which
I think,
yes,
yeah,
has been happening. That's the other thing, is the level of deception and robbery and the different things that have been going on behind the scenes like that. That has been happening. So a part of this delay and what's been taking so long, part of it is, I believe, that the people that want this money to be released to humanity is they're putting into place security and different protocols so that doesn't happen for us.
Yep.
Right?
Yes. And with those new security and protocols, I think the whole, bank bail-in scenario is nullified and that type of thing.
Or
right?
hopefully, yes.
Yeah, they won't be able to confiscate funds, right, in the transparency audit. We don't want to get into that side of the thing there. But I think if there's any other questions, when we go to the calls real quick here, if people have more questions, we can go into other aspects.
Let's do that. Okay. So, Jennifer, let's go ahead and open up the Q&A. While we are populating the Q&A, so here's what you guys do. In order to call in, you do... So in order to call in, you do *6. Now, if you have called in on the internet via VoIP, I don't know if you can actually call in. Jennifer, do you know whether that actually is possible or not? Okay. Well, in any case, *6, And so, the Q is populating. The one last thing that I just want to touch upon, because most of everything that we just covered has to do with the macrocosm. Now, the microcosm of how this actually is, how this has been playing out in your life that many people are aware of and many more people are not aware of. And we're not going to get into the details. I'm just going to plant some seeds here. What this enslavement matrix also has entailed. It has to do with your birth certificate. It has to do with you being used as your energy as labor being used as collateral. When we talk about, and when I reference the enslavement matrix, it's not just it feels like we're enslaved. There has been a very, very effective designed assault against humanity that it has very it's not legal, but there has been agreements that have been created and things that have been done that have actually enslaved you energetically. And this is part of the rabbit hole. It's important to understand it. And here's the one thing I just want to say, is that this is all about intelligence. It's about information. It is the important thing here, and I say this all the time, is to, as you go down this rabbit hole, to really not have, to watch your emotional aspect of this, because you don't want to keep being tied into that energy matrix by having an emotional charge on any of this. So as you go down the rabbit hole, if this is something new for you, the important thing to remember is to keep neutralizing your emotion about it and just take it in, just process your emotions as best as you can, but take it in as information. Because knowledge is definitely power. To become empowered at this point in our evolution of humanity right now, this is the kind of information that's important to actually be aware of. Okay, I wanted to just add that in regards to the microcosm of the macrocosm of our conversation. Sean, do you want to add anything to that
Nope.
on a macro? Okay.
Nope.
All right. So here we go. Keeping to our word, we're 40 minutes into the call here, and not too far over the first 30 minutes there. All right. So Jennifer, you want to bring on the first caller?
All righty then. First caller is area code 424.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sean and Deb. I took 3 pages of notes. I know some of the information, you kind of clarified things. My question to you, I think, is, Sean, you talked about the new system, and I couldn't understand what you were saying. You either said tips or sips or zips. Can you just spell it for me, what you think the new system is?
Yes. Well, it's a fact. It's called CIPS, CIPS.
You know what
it's an acronym.
Acronym, right. China International Settlement Payments. When I get on these calls, my memory goes.
Yeah.
But it's basically what the China has, a China-led initiative that is being adopted by BRICS. And it's basically an alternative system that allows wire funds, money to be transferred around the world through banks.
Without being confiscated.
Yes, or without even being able to be controlled, monitored, or stopped by the current controllers of the SWIFT system, which is the only system that's been around for a long time.
Okay. And as far as you know, like now that we're talking about it openly and it's out and, there are millions of people that are learning this information, is there anything to worry about in terms of them spotlighting any one of you or trying to, cause a problem in anyone's life, or should we move away from that kind of fear now?
Can I answer that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I respond to that? Okay. And thank you for asking that, because many of us have seen a plethora of people being taken out of this physicality and this plane because of their
knowledge.
The truth that they bring forth. Exactly. This is something that I have been prepared for by the guides that I work with for the last 6-7 years. And if you know anything about the work that I am bringing forth and that I'm encouraging people to engage with, the first and foremost is becoming masterful at clearing your field. And there's an experiential tool on my site, Waking Up with Deb, that you can get and download. It is very, very, very powerful. We have been working behind the scenes for the last several years, activating a unified field to bridge this reality. It's a dimensional shift, what we're about to experience.
Okay.
And in this, there's a tremendous amount of infiltration, physical and non-physical. Okay. It is imperative to be able to stand in your I am presence and to be able to clear your field, and to and not just here in this dimension, but multidimensionally and across timelines and time-space continuums. Because there has been a very effective assault against our free will.
Correct.
Multidimensionally and in this physicality, right?
Yep.
So this is part of the expanded esoteric aspect of this, is we're becoming aware of being multidimensional beings, and having a relationship with free will, as well as having a relationship with the aspect of being multidimensional. And being able to stand in that power and clear our field of any obstructions that have been created. So you're resonating with everything that I'm saying. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Okay. And
I know in my humanity and beyond that I have the power to do that, especially that it's all coming together, that I won't be the only one. There'll be many people doing the same thing.
Exactly. Now, here's an interesting thing. If I could just share a personal experience that I had just a few weeks ago. I have been doing this now for 6-7 years, being taught, and then becoming what my guides refer to as an untouchable. And the funny thing is, I had dinner with a friend, somebody that I used to produce her radio show for 15 years ago. Very spiritual, high-end health radio show. We hadn't seen each other, really hadn't hung out in like 10 years. So we were talking about all sorts of different things, what's been going on, what she's up to, what I'm up to, and I started talking about the JFK stuff, and that I'm starting to transmit his communications. The funny thing is, she looked at me, because our other friend that was with us, who's also a producer on Coast to Coast, and I'm being prepared to come out, and those of us on our team, Sean included, to come out and in more expanded media like that, right?
Good.
And she was like, "Oh my gosh!" My friend that's the producer said, "Aren't you afraid of being being exactly what you said?" And I said, "No, I am not, because I know how to clear my field." My friend, who is the host of the show, looked across the table and said, "Oh my gosh, you're untraceable right now. You're untrackable." So I just want to say, the reason I'm sharing that is because that is how powerful this work is. Okay. We are to stand and be in our empowered I am presence, so that these other outside energies cannot affect us. They cannot touch us. And this is a big part of Sean talks about, and he's very knowledgeable about being a sovereign. Oh, yeah. And so all of this plays into the self-empowerment. It's not ego. It is an energetic matrix of our I am presence that becomes activated.
And it's everyone's human right.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah,
absolutely.
I get it. Thank you for that. That helps a lot.
Thank you for asking. And what's your first name?
My name's Anne.
And thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you for being here too.
And Sean, did you want to say anything about that? I know that was a bit of an expanded response, but I think this is the foundation of where we're going right now in our evolution of in our spiritual journey.
I totally get it, and I think there are a lot of people ready to step up.
Great. Thank you for being the catalyst for that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I just wanted to add real quick that SIPS, Sean was absolutely perfect on that. It is China's international payment system. Okay, our next caller is from area code 334. Are you there?
What are the last 4 digits?
0859. Are you there?
And it's actually, it's Charlie. It looks like it's Charlie.
Pastor C. Don't want to use my real name. Yeah. Hello?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was calling, this is Pastor C. I was calling to see what was your viewpoints on what's going around with the Chinese yuan being an international currency tomorrow and the dong possibly revalued with it.
Sean, do you want to jump in there? Uh-oh, did we lose Sean?
And he's going to have to call back in.
Sorry, I muted myself and I didn't know. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think we're all waiting to see if the Chinese yuan, also known as the renminbi, will be included. In the sake of transparency, I can say that I have conflicting information from back channel sources that will this be a public announcement tomorrow, or is it a silent? But I think it's going to be public. That's where I'm leaning on. And so, yeah, again, as we stated earlier, with the yuan being included in the SDR basket of the IMF, the SDR, the drawing rights are really, it will force a global change in the central banking systems of each country in the world. And what it does is once that's included, along with the dollar and the British pound and others, the Japanese yen, and the euro, once that's there, it's almost like you take a pie, and that's a whole pie, and now you're shoving another piece in there, and all the other cuts of the pie, they all have to shrink, right? Because that's what's called they call in the financial world the currency reserve, foreign currency rebalancing. So that will be a pretty significant change for sovereigns. I think the mainstream media will probably play it down as one of those, you don't really understand this and we're going to talk over your head. But it really is a major shift. Regarding the VND, I haven't heard anything about the VND going tomorrow. Did you mean independently before any of the other currencies?
Well, I guess you could say that they're saying because the VND is connected, their economy is connected to China's.
Yes,
that it didn't have any choice but to revalue, even if it's only for a nickel.
Yeah, this could be a trigger. My kind of shortcut thinking on this is if Vietnam and other countries like Malaysia, like Indonesia, and all the countries in that region have a significant share of pull a significant share of yuan, renminbi, as a part of their central banking reserves. If the yuan changes that value, it may lift their currencies as well. Whether or not we're going to see the VND jump from its current $20,000 US dollars, 20,000 VND for the US dollar, to way up to $1 or 79 cents or some of these things. Let's say the market rate or the market international rate somewhere around 70 cents or whatnot. That's not the rates. We're talking the contract rates of $2, whatever. But that could be the catalyst that actually triggers the greater GCR, and we'll see all of the currencies maybe be revalued I've seen the chatter that the VND could go, and I believe that China can release the VND, but I don't think there's complications in doing that independently without the other currencies such as the dinar and the others going as well. So we'll have to wait and see, but I don't have a direct answer as to whether the renminbi being part of the IMF basket officially will bring the VND into a substantial uplift. I think they're all going to go at the same time. I'll stay with that.
You don't think a possibility of just a nickel or something of that nature?
That's interesting. We'll have to see how much it could go up.
Because I'm in agreement that it wouldn't go up to the $1 or $2 until everything went.
Well, those are the contract rates. Yeah, the contract rates are completely independent from the international rates that you'll see at the, But, I have to say, I'll tell you, if it did go up to a nickel, I'd probably be cashing a little bit of what I have in. Yeah, for sure. But we'll see. I think tomorrow and Tuesday, we'll begin to see the ramifications of that unfold. I would love to say that the entire GCR and the currency revaluations will happen in short order, but this could be a key linchpin to the whole process. I fully agree with that.
How close do you think we are to the overall, just everything going to first basket?
And we're close. We're very, very close.
2015 close?
Yeah, 2015. I would, if I was a betting man, and I am, I would still say we're definitely going to be, we're on track to see this for sure before Christmas. I have very high-level information that this whole process will be done before Christmas, and that doesn't mean on Christmas Eve. That means before that, right? So we're in that window, and like I say, I think this tomorrow, if this SDR gets reshuffled at the IMF with the yuan, that could be the handle being pulled on the floodgates and allowing this whole thing to start moving through. I think it's going to be a very interesting week this week.
Wow. Well, just one thing. When do you all have calls, or is this just something that comes up periodically? This is the first time I've been here.
Oh, okay. Deb, it's every Sunday night, right?
We are actually committing to that. Yes.
Because I saw it on IQD calls, and that was the first time I had seen it.
Yep, we just did our first call last week, and now we're starting to get more.
Okay.
We're starting to get more notices like IQD calls. Yeah, I saw that today. That was great.
Okay. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, just while we bring up that next caller, I'll just say that the replays, so the home at the moment is wakingupwithdeb.com. So replays, if you want to get the word out to people, because the last call that we did, the last show that we did, we had a lot of people the next day calling into the number that we sent out as the live number. That's not the replay number. So the replays, just please get the word out that that's where they're all sitting right now.
Okay, our next caller is from area code 902.
Still 334.
Okay.
Hello.
There you are.
Sorry, that got a little confusing. I have a note in my date book that I'm sorry to say I didn't scribble down where I got the information, but some time ago I wrote for Tuesday, December 1st, that China is supposed to roll out this SIPS system. So it would have come from a Dinar blog, but I can't be any more specific than that. Has anyone else heard such a thing?
Yes. I've heard that. As I said a little while ago, the SIPS has been what they call testing phase. It's been online for many, many months, right? Okay. And if you try to scan the search the internet for SIPs and that system. All you get is a bunch of reports, news releases from like last March and April and May, and then everything goes blank. So, but they've been testing it. It was originally connected to 13 major regional banks around the Asian area as a beta test to see if it works. And then I believe this quiet period where there's been really no news, I think there's one or two reports, and the December 1st is kind of like an interesting date given the fact that the yuan may be announced as part of the IMF's international currency holdings tomorrow. I believe that the December 1st date coming right on the heels of November 30th, that's what I believe is setting up this chain reaction that is going to make it a very interesting week, opening the floodgates, as I like to use as a metaphor. Right. So, yeah, I think there's some credibility to that date from the information that I have. We'll have to see. It certainly means if the Chinese yuan is in the SDR basket with all these central banks worldwide now holding that as part of their treasury reserve, their FX reserves, China's certainly going to need a way to get all those yuans out, right, out of their country and international. And we don't want the interference of the SWIFT system because obviously the bad guys, as I call them, could just push a button and it blocks these transfers. And we don't want that because that's part of what leads to all of the funds being available for our currency exchanges. So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting week. That's a great question.
And can I just ask one more thing? You gave fascinating information about this idea of a global currency shift going on for decades, it sounds like. When did the term global currency reset, or what was the term used previously?
Right. Deb, should I get that?
Well, the one thing I'll just say, I just started using global currency reset within the last probably 2 to 3 years. I don't know, 3 years or so.
It's not an official banking or financial industry term. You won't see mainstream media saying a global currency reset is underway. Right. No, the GCR and global currency reset is fundamentally an acronym and a phrase used in Dinar Land and other types of kind of like, non-mainstream media financial sites, right? Like
alternative.
Like Max Kaiser reports and others and J.C. Collins and those types of things. But it really is a catch-all phrase for leaving the fiat system, which is all debt-based and money created out of nothing, so that you can create lack, right? The lack of money, which creates this enslavement that we're talking about, right? And going to a gold-backed system, which keeps all the countries in line and not able to produce more money than they really can support, which creates inflation and all of those types of things. So you won't see much in the mainstream with the term GCR or global currency reset. It's really what we use in Dinar Land.
Now, I'd also just like to add to that the more spiritual aspect of this that I've also been referencing as the reset and the revaluation is that this is a reset for humanity, because what I'm getting the guidance on is the upheaval that we're going to see, which is going to be very, very, very noticeable, is that energy matrix of the survival of the fittest is we're going to be going through a paradigm shift. And that the way that this has been set up where we're engaging in that survival of the fittest program is really going to be dismantled. So this global currency reset is a kingpin for humanity's evolution on a much bigger scale energetically that also has to do with the revaluation of ourselves, that has to do with our hearts, the revaluation of from the purity of our heart. So the generosity of heart. So what I believe we're going to see over the next several years is the greed that that has been so insidious is not going, and that program, it's not going to be able to survive, because we're going to turn things upright. Everything's been upside down, right? This so much of the double standard, and if you all of the way you get ahead is by basically getting, knocking people out of your way kind of, energy kind of thing. So what my guides are saying is that this is really going to be a reset of humanity, and we are at choice point. Every single person will be going through tests and initiations to identify if they are in alignment with that vibration of generosity of heart. So one of my roles here in this call series and this show is to bring forth this information. And the other thing, too, is that this global reset is just the beginning. We're going to start seeing energies that are going to move us up our chakra system. So for those of you that aren't necessarily too familiar with chakras or energy, there might be a learning curve for you if you choose to engage, where this is a much broader perspective of humanity's evolution than just money. That's just the outpicturing of the energetics that is really behind the scenes that's being reset. Does that make sense?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
I got to say about this particular call, it's a fabulous blend of alternative thinking from all dimensions. So I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Imagine, Deb, when the world knows that we've changed from a fiat system to an asset-backed system. All the questions that are going to start coming out with everyday people that never thought about it, they're going to say, wait a minute, why did we have to change from one system to another? What was wrong with the fiat system? What was really going on?
Exactly.
And that starts the chain reaction of people waking up
Oops,
to what
where did
we
you
call
go?
the
We
death
lost
wave.
You just went digital. Sean just went digital. All right, so
what?
No, we can hear.
lost. Oh, really? Was it me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never gone digital before. Ooh. That's a new experience.
Paying for anything. We do know that about Sean.
Yep.
Are we ready for the next caller?
Yep.
Okay, wait 1 second, Sean. What did you? Wait. No, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Hold on 1 sec. I just want to, Sean, because I did not hear what you just said. If you could just repeat it, because there's something important to add to that.
Yeah, I was just saying the chain reaction of waking up to the financial system, which then leads to the type of things you were outlining a moment ago with the caller, is the questions that the everyday people will start to ask, like, why did we change from the fiat system to an asset back? What's the real difference between fiat and gold back? What was wrong with the old system? Why did it have to change? And those questions will lead to a chain reaction of realizations, which gets into eventually, oh my gosh, we've been like slaves to a debt system, and that touches every aspect of our lives every day. Yep.
Every single aspect.
That's where it starts.
So here's the one thing, because I thought that's what you had said, and it cut out, so I didn't hear you. Here's the thing that I want to add to that, is that this is very important to take into consideration, because of those of us that are quote-unquote in the know of what's going on, and even in this conversation, we're a minority. We're a major minority. There are millions of people. What Sean is alluding to and saying is that there are millions and billions of people that have no idea. And what's going to begin to occur, and I just want to have this be a thought process for you guys, because it's something my guides have been saying, people don't have a clue what is about to occur. How that is going to affect people is that they have been programmed into this matrix. They're in their robot mode, and their daily life is going to have some upheaval. The truth as it begins to come out is going to affect, there could be some very, very angry people So what I have said to the people that I'm working with, the students and clients I'm working with, is be prepared to actually vacate cities, because it could become a very tumultuous place to be as emotions are charged and people don't know what is coming, because their controlled program mechanisms are being dismantled. So it's really important to become very present as we evolve through this chain of events, and to be conscious that there are many more people that are going to be unaware of what's happening as it then is being revealed than are in the know about it. That's all I want to say at this point. Thank you for that.
Can you imagine when billions of people realize that their entire lives have been collateralized by the banks and the central banks? Yeah, that's going to be big.
It is.
Big. Okay.
And it's going to be a time for us to be very compassionate and be very present and be very aware.
Yeah, we don't want to give in to the posse mentality where we want to string people up on every corner. Right? We don't want that. We don't want a French Revolution type of scenario going on a global basis. Nope.
No. And one more thing in regards to that. Those of you that are on this call and that are part of this in this process, it's important for you to understand your role in all of this, because there are probably going to be situations just right in your own neighborhood or your friends and family where you're going to be the one that's going to be called forth to step up as a quote-unquote leader or a mouthpiece for awareness. So just to plant that seed too is just to be aware that there's an evolution even for your own calling to really be there as a catalyst, as a transitional bridge for people.
Yep, one person at a time. That's how we do it. Right? All right. Next caller.
Okay, here we go. Next one is area code 918.
Yes, this is Tom. How are you all this evening?
Hi, Tom.
Great. Hi, Tom.
I'm calling from Oklahoma. I've been involved in this, probably about 4 years. Been listening to your call the first time this evening. I wanted to ask some questions. When the GCR RV event takes place, for people in this country, will we be working through what I call the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications Systems, or SWIFT, or the SIPS system?
Good question. I believe
it's a good question.
Yes, my view from the information that I've gathered over years and following this closely is the architects of the plan, what we here call the GCR. They don't want to destroy the old systems. They just want to change the way that they're used, right? And so one of the main goals would be to have multiple systems that are working in unison. You don't want a monopoly, right? And the SWIFT system has been the monopoly and the key to controlling global finance, right? Mm-hmm. And, you got your finger on a switch, and if one country wants to do something, you just flip it, and all of a sudden they can't receive or send money. And that's control. I'll tell you, it doesn't get more controlling than that. So the purpose of the GCR, if it goes as planned, will be to repurpose the existing systems, repurpose the IMF, repurpose the central banking systems, repurpose, SWIFT you don't repurpose, it's just a system, right? It's a telecommunication system for messaging wire, transfers around the world. And the purpose of SIPS being part of Plan B is to have an alternative, like, they're saying, hey, you can't shut it down, so you might as well just capitulate and get with the program, right, because we'll use this one. So the real question, I think, still going back to a previous caller, is SIP fully connected and ready to go? My information says yes, and the previous caller bringing up the December 1st date, which is right after our big IMF, Chinese yuan inclusion. This week, I believe that, we'll see these systems working in conjunction. So if one is shut down, you just open up the other, the SIP, and the money goes through at that point, right? So
if let's say, for example, SIPs is not up and running, but you mentioned the purpose from the architects was to repurpose. So if they repurpose, then forget about the GCR and the RV. In time, SWIFT and SIPs won't work in competition, but they will work in cooperation with each other,
yes.
Correct?
Correct.
All right.
There'll be one can be a backup, or it'll depending on which country is going to send it where. SIPs might be the most efficient way, or SWIFT. Again, these two items or systems are just tools. It's really the people that are controlling them is what is got to get repurposed, right? We can't have the bad guys, as I call them, with their finger on the button, deciding who gets the transfer and who doesn't, and using it as a tool of punishment or control, as opposed to just a normal, hey, you want to send your funds and one country to another, and it's done. Yep.
Okay. So, one more question real quick,
sure.
if I can. During the exchange process, especially in this country, and I've heard different things. Well, don't worry about it. It's been taken care of. If we exchange at any one of the Tier 1 banks, what is the status of them and their derivatives?
Yes, great question. I can obviously I can't predict the future, so I don't know for sure, but I can tell you what I'm doing. Clearly, if I do part of my exchange with the Tier 1 bank, because I have multiple just groups, and I'm in different groups and things of that nature, but I do have my own. I'll be going in with everyone else, right, when we get the proverbial 800 numbers or notifications or whatnot. If I'm going to look at the landscape, and so we've got the alternative systems, which can't block money from being fit, but we also have the new full implementation of the Basel III system, which the main purpose of the Basel III is to regulate the derivatives exposure, the risk versus assets, so that a bank cannot go insolvent in times of crisis, right? So so we throw that into the mix along with the new SIPs, the way that countries can get loans for infrastructure projects. It used to only be through the World Bank and the IMF. Now you've got the China, the BRICS bank system, what's called the New Bank, New Development Bank, and the AIIB. But really, we want to talk about the New Development Bank. So again, a country, if they have natural resources and they want to take a loan so that they can build foundries and factories and pipeline systems and purchase transport ships and things of that nature, you used to only be able to go to the one guy in town, and that was the World Bank via the IMF, right? Now you've got all these alternatives, and I think that's going to force and set in motion a level playing field. So, a monopoly is never good for these kinds of things. When you have alternatives, it kind of keeps everything in check, along with Basel III. So I will look at the current banking landscape. Is Basel III implemented? Are my funds secure? What's the derivatives? I believe the GCR are going to do away with derivatives, because derivatives are part of the fiat system, and where you can create money out of nothing, and all these vehicles and mechanisms. I think the derivatives will be reduced.
Yeah, now you're getting to the heart of my question. If little Tom from Oklahoma decides to go to a Tier 1 bank and exchange, I don't know if they will tell me the truth. When I do my exchange afterwards, I will ask them, what is your status on derivatives? If they say, don't worry about it, it's taken care of, I think I have the right to say, all right, for me to leave my money here, would you reply in writing to me?
Yep. Show me, don't tell me. Yep.
Exactly. Because why go through all this? You know, we've been waiting and waiting, and like I said, I've been in it 4 or 5 years. That's nothing compared when this happens. Now the real work starts.
Exactly.
And
you see.
If I can jump in here, one of the things that we talked about on the last week's show is just to remind you guys that we are the higher percentage of people. That we're in this transition time. What we're talking about here in regards to the banking, there's valid concern, and we are going to need to hold them to the fire, basically, and our numbers. As we unify to do this, we are the ones that are going to need to hold them to being truthful and accountable. And so I think that this is another reason for, as we commit to this show, and the other things that we'll have available as far as media and outreach with you guys, that we actually unify and we keep the lines of communication open. Because this is where we're in this transition time where they need to know that we are a force to be reckoned with, that we are in our power, we are empowered, and we're not going to allow the deception to continue, where it's all about them being, on the top and winning and in that vibration. So it's important. What you're asking and what we're talking about right now is that we unify, we stick together.
Right, and that's the
keep
thing.
The communication open.
Yeah, and I don't want the bank to be on top, but by the same token, I don't want to be on top. I want a level playing field.
Absolutely.
And if I cannot get my reply in writing, I'll go ahead and exchange. I'll say, give me a cashier's check. Then I'll have to decide where to put it.
Right.
Yep.
See? And this is a very important thing that I think a lot of people have missed, that the banking system, and I'll just say this, there's a lot of people that are in this, and I've followed this, and I've thought of other people, they're not as educated.
Nope.
And I think a lot of people, when they go to the bank, they're going to get railroaded.
Yep.
Not me. No. I'll just walk.
That's why this conversation is critically important, because so many people still don't understand the level of deception that's been playing out behind the scenes. And this is where we become smart. I'm just referring to it as smart bunnies who have gone down that rabbit hole, who understand what has been going on. And it may not be an overnight, all of a sudden they're going to be honest. So it's important that we stick together, unify, and we hold them to the transition that is necessary for this paradigm shift.
Right. And and not only in banking, but like I said, I've been in this about 4 years. Regardless of any money I'm going to get, the most important thing I've got out of this, I was so blind. The education I have gotten. I mean, if I were to go up and talk to someone on the street about this that didn't even know anything, they'd think I was a nut.
Absolutely, right?
What's this guy talking about?
Welcome to the club, Tom. Welcome to the club.
What's he saying? The politics and everything, and I noticed too, the powers that be, if you will, they know. I watched some debates about 2 weeks ago, and it was the Republican debates, and I about fell over. 4 candidates mentioned we need to get back to a gold-backed currency. We need to get to an asset-backed currency, one said. The other said we need to get away from this fiat money.
I would have fallen over too.
You can't tell me they don't know what is going on.
Right.
And I just thought, Joe Blow watching this that doesn't know anything, boy, there's a lot of people, and I know what you said, when they find out, what's going on, they've been indebted. Well, I think that's going to take a while because that's just not going to happen. Even when we get to a level playing field, the bad guys, they're going to be still controlling a large majority of things. Let's be real,
They're trying.
Yep. And they're not going to go away overnight. But, well, you answered my questions, and thank you. And I will listen again next Sunday. A very good show you all have. Very good.
Thank you for being here. Great questions.
Thank you.
Awesome caller. Our next caller is from area code 310.
Hello?
Yes. Can we have your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Carrie from Los Angeles.
Hey, Carrie.
Hi. Hi. My question is, I'm a newbie, and I've been buying the Iraqi dinar, and a lot of the places around here are sold out of it. So I've been going online, and does it matter if the dinar is uncirculated or certified if you go online?
I would recommend, I prefer uncirculated.
Okay.
I don't think I have a strong reason, other than I do know that in terms of its value right now, if you need to, I know a lot of people that have taken some of their dinar and they've turned it back into the online currency dealers to buy like VND with it, like do an exchange, for dinar to VND or VND to dinar or whatnot, Indonesian rupiah and whatnot. You always get less for the circulated notes. Will that have a bearing on any exchange value for the GCR as we're talking about? I do not think so. A dinar is a dinar is a dinar. I mean, a circulated U.S. dollar will still buy me the same thing when I walk in if I have a brand new one, right, uncirculated so far. So my answer is no, I don't. In terms of exchanging it and getting the RV rates, circulated versus uncirculated is not an issue.
Okay, and there's one other thing is they have some that is U.S. Treasury registered. Why do they have that?
No, you want to buy, if you're going to buy from an online dealer, you want to make sure that they are registered with the U.S. Treasury. That means they're an official dealer and they have to follow certain rules, regulations, and protocols. It basically means they're legit versus buying online from Amazon, from eBay or Amazon. Those are not necessarily licensed U.S. Treasury dealers, right? So you're taking a risk that you shouldn't, right? I would always look for registered with the U.S. Treasury. It's almost like the Better Business Bureau of currency dealers.
Great. One other thing, you talked about groups on the last call that you had, and what kind of groups and how do you join a group? I think Deb talked about gladiators.
That's a big.
That's different.
Yeah.
The reference to gladiators is just that is not a that's not a group per se in regards to a currency group.
Blog site. That's a website, a blog.
Exactly.
Yeah. right? But there are basically several levels of groups. One are private placement program groups, and those are groups that you have members have sent in their currency to a centralized location and a group leader, and they are being exchanged at a very high level and in very high amounts. It doesn't mean each member has a large amount of currency, not whales, but the group itself has depending on how many members and how much currency each member has, they have massive negotiating power with the currency buyers, the exchangers, and the what's called the intake teams that are connected with the U.S. Treasury and China and others. So that's one level of group, EPPs as I call them. All right, it just means that you've sent in your currency and you've got a leader that's negotiating and working on your behalf, with that currency. The next level of groups, there's sovereign groups, which are usually connected to sovereign nations and people that have kind of been able to dovetail into that. So to answer your question, on those types of groups, you can't get in. And at this point, I would be very wary of anybody that says they can get you in, because to the best of my knowledge, I'm in several private placement groups. I can tell you that they closed a long time ago. I mean, there's just no way you can get in them. So if somebody is saying, I can get you in, and you're in, and we've got our own private placement group going on at this late time of the GCR process, I would say be very, very, very careful, right? So I would say most of them are not, they're not legit, and there's going to be some funny business. And actually quite a few groups that have done that over the recent months, there has been definite legal action. I know that as a fact, and there's been stuff going on in catching these guys. So the next level of groups is the Internet group or General 64 and that type of thing, and that's where you're still holding your currency, but you're registered with either, back in the day, when it was G64 and that, you sent in an email and you just said, hey, here's my contact, here's my email address, and I want to register. And that's all the information you had to give. I think you had to name your city, not your address or no personal information, just the city you're in. And I think the option was how much currency you're holding, but that you didn't need that to register. And then there was a time when the very popular site Dinar Recaps, that email list was integrated into for notifications, not for looking at members or anything like that, just as a vehicle to get the word out to Dinar Land that, you as part, we call the Internet group those of us that are aware that there's even a GCR going on, because, 99.9% of the global population do not know about this, right?
Right, yeah.
So I believe, and the information I have is, if you're watching any Internet site, if you're listening to different calls, if you're getting regular updates or email updates, like what are they called, news bulletins from any of the popular Dinar, land sites, you're going to know about the notification. I mean, they're going to say, like, if it's 800 numbers, if it's you go to a site and you click and you get like a queue, you get your appointment, or however it's going to be done. If you're anywhere connected to Dinar Land on the Internet or on calls or on emails or Twitter, blasts with people that are connected, the so-called gurus or whatnot, you're going to know when this happens, and you're part of that group. There are other different levels within these levels of groups, but I'm not going to get into that. The bottom, I think your main question is, how do you get in? If you're watching the sites and you're keeping yourself updated regularly with what's going on in Dinar Land, you're going to know about it. There's just no way it's not going to get out, right? And they want it to get out, right? So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good information. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, I have a question.
Okay.
How does someone verify if their group is legitimate or not?
Well, that would depend on which kind of group are you talking about. You mean like a private placement group or a sovereign group or Internet? Okay. Well, again, most of this was done over the past couple of years. Some go back farther than that, right? And like the sovereign groups, they formed, I think, starting over 5 years ago. And the way you knew that was first you had to register, and then you had to sign an NDA. And so there's your first flag. If a private placement group did not give you a formal NDA to sign before you went any further, that's not a legitimate group, all right? Okay. And so that was step one. Step two is once you sign the NDA, the reason you sign the NDA is because they are going to send you, they're going to disclose information to you that is not publicly, for public digesting. You can't go out and say, oh, look, here's all this information with the paymaster name and the banks and that we're working with and the group leaders and blah, blah, blah. That's why you sign the NDA, because you cannot get that out. It's not for public, right? And so once you got that information, it was pretty easy to look up the backgrounds, the resumes, the dossiers of the various legal teams involved and that type of thing. So that was your next kind of vetting process. So, and then once that all came down to the point where you had to send in your currency, right? That was your moment of choice, right? Mm-hmm. So hopefully you did your due diligence at that point, and some people that went, I think most of the fraud that people talk about that went on within the private placement groups were not actually with the private placement groups themselves, but they were
imposters.
Yes, there were people that went out to other unsuspecting people and said, I'm connected with this group, and I'm part of the management team, and I've been designated to help you get set up, and so I'm one of the depots, send me your currency. It was people, impostering themselves. Oops, that's not the right word, but yeah, people pretending to be connected who really weren't, and some people found themselves out of their currency, right? But I believe if those people did their due diligence, they would have realized that this guy claiming to be a part of it is really not a part of it, right? So that's what I think the majority of the scams that are out there that you heard is people misrepresenting who they were.
Okay.
So that's the other crazy thing too about all this is not only do we have the deception of the corporations and the groups and the group, you refer to them, Sean, as the bad guys. I usually say the cabal. But then we also have the people that have been deceptive that are out here in our field of the sandbox, So it's been a very interesting journey because we've also needed to really hone our discernment and abilities, and to be able to cut through the quagmire and to cut through the different levels of deception. So it's a really good time to be very clear about who it is that you're dealing with.
Right. Okay. Our next caller is from area code 703.
Yes, good evening. First-time caller, Greg from Virginia. How are you?
Hi, Greg.
Hi. One of the things that I was hearing now is, and I know that it's a big event, the fact that the IMF is going to be accepting the recommendations from their own experts in terms of the Chinese currency. But I also read that the last time in 2010, because they do this like every 6 years, so 5 years, in 2010 when the Japanese currency was accepted into the set, that really no transactions with the currency occurred for a long period of time, and they were mentioning that even if they accept it tomorrow, that it won't take effect until September of next year. What is your comments about that?
Good question.
I mean, it was written by the IMF in their articles. So.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of infrastructure systems, all kinds of systems. I mean, it's not a matter that something is accepted, and then overnight computers. I'm a computer technologist, and I work in banking systems, so I know what it involves.
Okay. Yes, that's a great question. I think it gets to the heart of some of the I think what are perceptions or misconceptions about what this announcement tomorrow will be. Again, I believe that the very nature that it's included, that means it's a done deal, and I agree with you 100%. The mechanics and the logistics involved is not going to, we're not going to wake up Tuesday and every central bank is now going to be rebalanced with renminbi, right? And I'm sure you're aware of that. So, but I think it's the fact that it will be included and it's now there. What we're waiting for is that that event to be part of the triggering, that it's now official. Being official, whether, I don't think, Chinese renminbi have to be all across the world and in the central banks before the exchanges can happen and the GCR can move to its next tangible phase, which is going live, right? But, yeah, sure. So I agree with you 100%. It's not like all of a sudden tomorrow they're going to announce that the renminbi is in the SDR basket at the IMF, and then Tuesday all the central banks already have this all done. And no, that's the mechanics and logistics part, and that could very well take the better part of a year. But being in the banking, they're preparing for that already, right? So,
yeah, they were mentioning that from their experience in 2010 when the Japanese yen went in. It wasn't until 4 months to 5 months that the first, cross-country transactions balancing their monies using those currencies took place, because the systems had to be prepared. And this is a similar cycle. So I'm just hoping that, listeners, look, we all wanted this to come sooner than later because we're all anxious, at least on my part, to help a lot of people, including the immediate family,
absolutely. Absolutely.
But it's also being on this for 6 years, it almost seems like towards the last week of November, beginning of week of December, everybody's jumping on down because we're tying things down to a particular event, and all of a sudden it's got to be this Christmas and stuff like that. And I just hope that people don't get too disappointed,
Yeah, I look at the amalgamation of all the different things, and anybody that sees my posts on the board that I post on, I absolutely am totally against looking at any kind of one date as that means it's going to happen, right? There's been many of those dates, like when the ISX in Iraq, when the ISX is going to connect to international markets. That means the RV is going to happen, right? No, it doesn't. Right. So, yeah, but I think what we're looking for is the official acceptance of the in terms of the GCR of us moving towards exchange. I think we don't need the renminbi to be populated throughout the global markets for the exchanges to happen. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. I just believe that the official announcement will be kind of like the triggering, one of the triggers that allows us to get to the next point. And I hope that the main next trigger, which is the key thing for all of us, is the release of the funds, because now it's inevitable that this whole thing is happening, right? So we need those funds. We need the U.S. dollar to be gold backed to participate in this, and so that's what I'm saying. So what I agree with, it's not that we're going to wait for the renminbi to be all over the place.
Yeah, when you see the tremendous accomplishments that Iraq has really done in the last 6 months, it was really amazing they've been able to do all of that. But I'm still a strong believer, and as I listen to calls that do lean towards the news, not so much, boots on the ground type of situations, but until the security is really, really solid over there. And I was seeing a fairly recent documentary on Mosul, and it's a big, big city, in which there's still big parts of it being controlled, call it pockets or whatever, but you just can't be opening up the currency like that when it's so readily available for them to steal it right from under you. And I think that has to come first. And it may take a little bit longer than what people are expecting. And I'm not saying that we're not within the time frame of this year, but, it could take a little bit longer now, especially with those other distractions that we have with Russia and Turkey and so forth, so.
Yep. It's a good point.
Well, the one thing I just want to add. Sorry.
Yeah,
the one thing I just want to add to what you're saying is that it's also really important to look, behind the scenes in regards to the security that you're talking about in Iraq. Who is creating who really is creating that destabilization of that area? Because there's so many hidden agendas.
Yeah.
That often what we're seeing is really not what meets the eye. It is not what most people would think.
Yeah, politically, everybody's trying to create destabilization to, stretch sentences and all kinds of things that were about to come, just to create chaos, So, yeah.
Right.
Yep. I do understand what's here. One last comment, and this is a wonderful call, by the way. This is my first time calling in, and I think I'll continue coming into it every Sunday, is when they were mentioning about the education and the people, my kids were over, my oldest son is graduating from university next year, and they were here for the holidays with a few friends that came down and ended up staying with us. And one night I just kind of decided to quiz them, how much, these are graduate kids, right, that are heading, months away from going out of college. And I just asked them a few questions, do you know what the IMF is, or do you know, for one thing, what the Federal Reserve Bank is? And it's amazing. All of these kids are not taught anything in college about the reality of what's going on. They think that it was the U.S. bank,
Exactly. It's a U.S. government, and it's an official, yes.
And when I try to explain it to them, you can see their jobs dropping, and, I read just about every book about how this whole thing got started, and when I explain bits and pieces, it says, no, that can't be happening. It says, absolutely it is, And I ask a couple questions. Says, have you ever seen that good show, House of Cards, which I love, because it shows you kind of bits and pieces of what's really going on behind the scenes at the political level, and that's nothing compared to what the World Bank has done to all of us, So anyhow, that was just my last bit comment there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Take care, and hopefully we have a wonderful end of the year here soon. Okay.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, that was another confirmation. Oops, sorry about that. That was just another confirmation what we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah. Area code 302.
Hello. Well, you sort of touched on one of my questions earlier. You were talking about derivatives a little bit. And my question is, there's serious derivatives. There's a U.S. comptroller site, which I have seen, which shows the major banks in the U.S. have trillions and trillions of derivative exposure, and most of this is cross-collateralized derivatives, worthless. And in this GCR, as you're calling it, is there somebody, or these matrix funds, are they going to cover this, or is there some plan to, because if there's not, then there still has to be a terrible crash involved with this.
Right. That you're touching on an area that is mired in incongruencies within the kind of the intel back channel, and it's very hard to discern disinformation from the truth. However, so the two sides are, I'll summarize because there's like shades of gray, but we'll just keep it black and white. The one side is saying that the GCR, when we go to asset and gold-backed currencies, derivatives become greatly nullified. They don't go away. They do serve a purpose. But for a bank, and that site you mentioned, the comptroller, and there's a few other kind of watchdog sites, the amount of derivatives is staggering. And Wells Fargo is actually the smallest derivative exposure of all the Tier 1 banks. And,
right. I noticed that they had $5 trillion, whereas, say, Chase had $65 trillion. It's a huge difference. Right.
Yes. And so the one side is the GCR with the asset-backed by very nature, and the Basel III in particular. Sort of the unknown parts of Basel III about what it really is going to do is going to really clamp down in allowing public, private, I would say private banks, but, banks that hold all of our money every day, they can't go out and go to the global casino and throw it around, right? So Basel III is going to help with that. The other side of the coin is there needs to be a crash in order to reset the system, right? Honestly, I'm not a proponent of the crash theory. Yes, the crash will happen if we don't have a GCR. That's inevitable. Anybody that's studied any of this for a little while knows that there's no way this fiat system can go very much longer, right? And so whether it's kind of a soft crash where while this transition happens and some of the chaos that Deb speaks of, will permeate out there and make people question the very nature of the banks that are holding their money and what they've been doing. Because like the previous caller said, most people haven't got a clue as to what's really going on and how the banking system works and that type of thing. So I'm kind of in the middle. My information and my research shows me that there may not be a crash at all in terms of like the markets going way down and the banks all having to like have a holiday for 30 days or 2 weeks or something like that. I'm more on the side of I think there may be a soft crash, which will help wake people up. I mean, during this transition, I'll be like, hey, what's going on? But it won't be where everyone runs to the bank and wants to get their cash out like the 1929, right, and that type of thing.
Right.
So, yeah, but the real truth is we don't know. We don't know how this will play out. It also depends on how much the remaining bad guys want to make it a problem, right? Will they? But that's why this exchange process has taken so long. I believe all of those pieces have been painstakingly and elaborately, piece by piece, been put into place, culminating into the time frame we're in now, where Plan B is now in place that can be a safety net for any of the shenanigans that the bad guys that are still around can try. Because they're going to lose, but they may want to go out with a blaze of glory in their own eyes, right? We don't know. So, but that's a great observation, and we're just going to have to wait and see, because I think any information that tells me exactly this is the way it's going to happen, I have information that says it's exactly going to happen the opposite way, right? So I can't really, without being one of the plan authors or having that connection, I don't know the exact how it's going to
probably won't happen either in any way that we could imagine, or probably something different altogether.
Yep.
The other question, which kind of ties into this, is it necessary for the quote-unquote, as you call them, bad guys, need to be defeated completely or concede or to accept their exit plan, as you would a CEO who was leaving per se? Does that have to happen, or do they have to be defeated completely? It just seems as if, right, that they don't.
The top guys, the top guns, the big guys, those are remember that, every corporation and every bank, no matter what, is a pyramid structure, right? You got the guys at the top, and then you've got all the minions and all the employees, and and they just do what they're told. Honestly, I know quite a few bankers myself, and they don't agree with the way certain things happen and the way the derivatives and the way all that happens. And I think if there's a change at the top, a repurposing, as I said earlier, I think a majority of the employees and the other people that are doing what they're told every day will finally be able to breathe and say, this is done. I'm not doing it anymore, and I don't need to do it anymore. That's maybe that's optimism on my point, but I believe that's the way. So, yeah, you don't have to have every bad guy taken out, but obviously there's a lot of information in the more kind of rabbit hole scenarios that says, yeah, there will be actually many, many thousands of arrests that happen, but I think that'll happen after the GCR goes, right? At least for us in Dinar Land, right? That type of thing. So,
one of the things that's personally frustrating for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of people in quote-unquote Dinar Land, is the level of deception that people have fallen under. And I mean, my first awakening was in the wellness world when I understood that the medical industrial complex was off. And then it fell into other areas, and now I'm looking at every area of my life and like, what isn't a deception? Where haven't I been duped? And And
yes,
and when you start explaining things to other people, they look at you like you're speaking a foreign language, and it's frustrating.
The deer in the headlight syndrome.
Yes, they can't accept the fact that their life as they know it, and things are not as they think that they are. And but what is amazing to me, and it really is amazing, is that these powers to be, if you want to call them that, have allowed us to communicate to each other through the internet the way that they have. That, to me, that they didn't control that, and I'm flabbergasted. And I'll let you move on to the next caller, but thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
In regards to the internet, that actually, when I got involved with the internet back in the 2002-2003 time frame, out of the entertainment industry, and because I was trying to get conscious media off the ground through the into the late 80s into the 90s. I realized that the internet was going to be what was going to be able to level the playing field for those of us that were of a different, let's say, vibration or intention. What's important, and just to touch upon some of the things you guys just were, this last caller was that brought up, is that to be aware, we don't know. And what Sean, you just said in regards to somebody says it's going to be a certain way, and you've got intel saying it's going to be the opposite. That's a really key point. We're in a situation right now where we have never been in anything like this before. If anybody tells you, oh, it's going to be this, this, and this, and this, my feeling is that is not the case. We are creating this reality as we go. That is why it's important for us to unify. It's important for us to keep the lines of communication open, to understand our role as the catalyst and the conduits to roll this out as this new paradigm, and to do it in a very conscious, very present, very heart-centered way, so that this deception that we're really now openly talking about does not have a place to continue to thrive. So this is really a key conversation, is to not just go, oh, trust, not necessarily just trust, like, oh, it's going to be this way, this way, this way. We're in this together. We're here to create this and manifest this the way that we are choosing for it to occur, and in conjunction with what has been being prepared for behind the scenes. Sean, do you want to add to any of that?
No, I think you covered that great, and I believe the last few callers, and just is an example of people that kind of woke up, and they have woken up, and they're like the last caller specifically. I mean, he goes, the level of deception just keeps getting bigger. The more you dig, the more you realize the level of deception, right? And
exactly.
And I think tying into what you were saying earlier about the chaos that's going to come. And I don't necessarily believe it's the chaos like the banks are going to close and there's going to be all this or that. The chaos is going to come from people realizing the deception. That's what's going to start. It literally will. That's going to be a big thing to deal with after this event happens and the other event.
Yep.
All right.
So just a time check. We're towards the end of the second hour here. So I think just to really keep this to close to 2 hours. One of the things that I did on the last show is I did a guided visualization with an activation. I'm not feeling that I'm going to do that this time, but what I would like to do is do a specific call and show between now and next Sunday that is that. So if you're interested in being a part of that, then please, the best way to get the information is just to go to the website, to register, and also to check back with that. And one of the things that, if you're new to who I am and why I refer to my guides, is that I'm very, very I do very clear and very detailed telepathic communication with beings that are here to support humanity's evolution. One of the reasons that Sean and I are doing this is because Sean has been on the other end of that, as well as being on the other end of the activations, which create a lot of alchemical transformation. So this is where it comes from. This is where the part of what we're doing here is bridging from just the 3D information into the more esoteric, people would refer to this as 5D, but it's really, it's the bridge for us to transcend from this enslavement matrix and the vibration that the mass consciousness and many of us have been existing in, which has been a very disheartening experience year after year, to then re-engage with our heart's desires, and to activate that electromagnetic energy of our hearts, and also the alchemical transformation, so that we can actually move from transcending from this matrix and also into ascension. There's a process. So rather than doing that now, what I'm feeling and being guided to do is just say to you, if that resonates with you, if you want to know more, if you want to experience that and to engage with that, then go to the website and the wakeupwithdeb.com and register, and or just keep tabs, because there will be something on the updates about that. And I'm probably going to do it on either Friday or Saturday. So that's what I'm looking at. And it'll probably be part of my ITV show, which is Wake Up Shift is Happening. So I'm just actually resetting a set in Los Angeles, because I just came back from, I'm just over here from where I also live is Sydney. So Sean, why don't we do you want to take 2 more callers?
Sure. Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm always amazed at how fast the time goes. And
I know.
We've got a lot of good callers in. So let's do 2 more, and I'm really loving this audience that are coming in here.
Yeah. All right, Jennifer.
Okay, our next caller is the voice caller, David.
David, if you're there.
Okay. He's not engaged his microphone. So we'll go on to the next caller, area code 619.
Yes, hello. This is Scott in San Diego.
Hey, Scott.
My question, we hear a lot of things on the internet and so on and so forth, gurus and everybody else. Do you guys know if there's going to be a cap on the Zim, like for $1 billion, either individually or in groups?
I've also I'm up to speed on the information you're speaking of regarding this. All I can say without adding to what's already been said is that this exchange is really, given that it's part of where the funds are coming from that are backing the GCR. It's all about, it's a humanitarian project. It's freedom, ending of the financial slavery system, and many people in Dinar Land, a vast majority, I'm happy to say, are going to help many people with the proceeds, and that's really why the RV was included, the Dinar. And as people got into it, it was decided, hey, this is a great vehicle to help get the humanitarian purposes off the ground with, like boots on the ground, all of us. And so regards to the limits, I believe that I have to be careful because I can't say some things. Because these are related to humanitarian efforts, there are limits. I know of some specifically, and I've seen them in writing. And the limits are only set on how much personally you can have versus how much of the additional proceeds over the limit that will be earmarked that have to be used for humanitarian projects and things of that nature. So you'll still have the full amount of your exchange, But if it's a very, very high amount, and I won't speak to the actual amounts other than what's out there, but the primary purpose for that is, let me hypothetically say, if the cap on an exchange is $500 million for you personally, but you had enough to get you to $2 billion, you may see that you'll be asked and said that, there's a limit, but the rest of it you can put into humanitarian projects of your own, and it'll be tracked, and you have to do it, you commit to it, or you can let it go to other projects that, you can keep tabs on, but it'll be run by other, humanitarian groups and things of that nature. So I can't really directly answer the question, is there a specific cap on a specific currency, other than agree that there are caps and what the reasons for them that I just explained. And that's about as far as I can take that.
So does it have to be actually put into a humanitarian fund, or can we be in charge of donating to funds?
Yeah, my understanding is once you reach the cap, whatever currency funds you had beyond the personal cap. Now, the personal cap means you can do whatever you want with that money, right? But the rest of it will either be earmarked for projects that you can do yourself, but they'll be earmarked, meaning you're committing to doing that, and you're going to have to provide evidence that you're using that money for humanitarian projects, and there's guidelines and things like that. Or you can just say, I want it to go to this, humanitarian purpose, and they can, do with it what they want. But again, that's, there's different caps. The caps that are mainly spoken about in Dinar Land are the caps on getting the contract rate, right? So that means if the contract rate for the VND is $2, but the international rate is 70 cents or 72 cents or 74 cents or whatever, you're only going to be capped up to that amount on the contract rate, and the rest you can get on the international rate, right? The only time the humanitarian projects come in is if you're in a group, a private placement, because those are clearly doing humanitarian things, and the reason they're being allowed to exchange at various rates is because of that. So I hope I'm not confusing it. On your side, on the private side, you're going to be capped at the contract rate, and then everything else you have, you can still get at the normal rate, right? But if you're in a private group, it'll be a little different.
Well, there's no contract rate on the Zim. That's what I'm talking about.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
I think this also falls under that category of what we were talking about, is until this really starts to be revealed, we don't really know what to expect.
Yeah,
expect
right.
The unexpected, yeah. But I have definitely heard and seen some fairly, what I would say, convincing, or what I consider to be pretty reliable information sources that remember, nobody knows about the Zim except us in Dinar Land, right? Nobody. And so I think some of those higher rates that we're seeing on the Zim are actually contract rates, right? They talk about it could be 11 cents, could be 22 cents, could be 26 cents, could be 17 cents. The lower end could be the international rate, I believe. Those higher numbers are actually going to be a contract rate, and the reason they're out publicly, they're only in Dinar Land. Nobody, even a lot of people know about the dinar, but far less people outside of Dinar Land have any idea what's going on with the Zim. None, right? So I would expect that these higher rates are contract rates on the Zim.
So what if we take the international rate and we still exceed the cap limit?
I don't think there is a cap on the international rate. I don't even know how that can legally be done. No, we're confusing two things, right? The only time caps have ever been mentioned, even in the more general Dinar Land discussions and places, is specifically related to the contract rate.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. Our next caller is area code 562.
How you doing?
Great.
Hello.
You want to tell us
Hi.
your name and where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Los Angeles area, city of Compton specifically. Great call tonight. Very informative. And you know what? I got you guys on speaker. If you give me like maybe 5 seconds to switch over. Hold on 1 second here.
Sure.
Okay.
And did he say what his name is?
Not yet.
Okay. No, my name is D.
Hi, Steve.
No, D. D is in David.
D.
Oh, D. Okay. Hey, D.
Hey,
Hi, D.
I got a pleasure to be on here, as I stated earlier. I have a question. There was a couple of things that I mentally debunked for about, I guess you could say, maybe over the past year. And what I typically did was I did an analysis of a lot of different concepts in the currency arena, whether we call it the GCR, RV, and I know those are internet terms in regards to what is the wealth transfer that's getting ready to happen. But, Sean, I heard you earlier tonight mention contract rates. Do you actually, and I don't mean to be sarcastic, I'm asking with all humility and respect, but do you really think that the contract rate exists for the common currency holder?
Okay, the common currency holder.
Yeah, as in
okay.
Our arena.
All right. Yeah, I can tell you. I can answer that to the best of my ability. Well, I know for a fact that the contract rates exist. They absolutely exist. I have absolute written evidence of that. Yep, right. Personal knowledge of that through some of the activities and things that I'm in. So, and that's in the higher level kind of group arena. If they exist there, I can only extrapolate that based on other information that's out there in Dinar Land, that those are there for Dinar Land as a group, what we call the Internet group as well. And, so we don't know if a contract rate exists. If we're going to go in and we get an 800 number and we sit down, we're not going to know till we're there, right? I mean, I don't and you don't. All I know is that I do know that there are contract rates for sure, and different levels and that type of thing. So that's the best way I can answer your question. In the general sense, I have to believe that they are there because I know they're there in some areas and they're going to be there for others. But again, there is the limit, right? There's only so much of the contract rates. It's a big pool, and when the pool is empty, they're gone, right? That's true as well.
Okay. Well, the other thing is what made me ask the question, because I came in the queue earlier and then I backed out. But I heard you say that. I said, let me go back in the queue and ask that. And what sparked me to ask that question is not just because you brought it up, but I listen to pretty much every conference call that's out there. I don't always go in the queue, but I listen to pretty much everybody with the exception of a couple of people. And the purpose is to, I'm after the information, whether it be articles or whether it's intel or whatever the case may be. I'm curious about what people have to bring to this arena. And I'd say the first time in a long time, I actually heard somebody outside of Bruce and Tony from TNT actually talk about the rates are going to come out very high. And it actually surprised me from the source. It was China Global. And I was listening to their call, and it wasn't Jersey, I think it was Doug, that said the rates are going to come out high. And he also mentioned that there are approximately 9 additional currencies that are not going to be in the first basket, but he mentioned the 4 that we are pretty much familiar with. And I only thought, well, maybe that wasn't going to happen. And so with me saying all this, I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on the Iranian rial.
No.
Yeah, I only chuckle a little bit because I have some other background with the Iranian real and some other places. Yes, the big debate in Dinar Land is the real in the first basket or the second basket, right? But the real is definitely, in my opinion, from the information I have, it's absolutely going to revalue. It makes all the sense in the world. You don't even have to kind of be a Dinar Land kind of rumor fantasy person. You just have to look at the economics,
right?
And it's going to happen, right? But the big question is, will the real be in the first basket or the second? And my answer to that is, I have no idea, right?
Okay.
But I would speculate it could be in the second basket, but I know I'm going to create a lot of controversy by stating that. So
no, hey, I appreciate your opinion.
Yeah, but one way or the other, it's going, and I could see it being in the first basket because I think that's ready, and that's part of the same region. And there's a whole host of other reasons, which I won't get into details with the time. But yeah, the number nine in the currency basket, I would say that's pretty solid information from what I have, and I do consider, the Land Group, they're pretty good barometer of grounded, reality-based information. So that's a great place to. I follow those guys myself quite a bit.
One last thing, and I'll let you guys move on to the next caller. One of the things that I've brought this to different other calls that I listen to and that I have a great deal of admiration for and respect, including I'm not gonna say he's a new caller, but the Come Let Us Reason Together call. I listen to Mr. KJ, and I think he brings a lot of good information, to the currency family or the currency holders that are in the know. One of the things that I had shared with him several months back was, and just my opinion, and I'll share with you guys as well, was I actually believe that all of this is going to go together. And the reason I do, I think it just makes practical sense, and it's just pure opinion, because, some people believe in the concept of double dipping. I personally think that would destroy things, and that would harm the world's economy if, you take, your revalued IQD or rupiah or whatever you have, and then go out and buy boatloads of something else that is scheduled for revaluation. So I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that, but I think it only makes sense that it all goes together. However, if there are different baskets that are scheduled for, reword that, if there are different time frames for different baskets to go, do you think there will be any restrictions on individuals getting in the second baskets of currency if you don't have it already?
Yeah, I think that there will this opportunity that we're in right now with the currencies that we're dealing with including the Iranian real, and I can tell you I own some. And what you say makes a lot of sense. I have also some good information that, if it does, I think because of the logistics of how everything has to roll out, that there will be different, it's a phased rollout because there's only so many currencies in the world that are really going to substantially revaluate. All the currencies are going to RV, but most of them are going to be very, small amounts, right? And changes. But the bigger ones, like the ones we're involved with, and some of these other 9, they're going to, there's going to be countries you've never heard of, right? That are all of a sudden going to go from, almost nothing to something relatively substantial. And so I have information that it will be a process if you want to invest in the additional baskets, if that's the way this rolls out.
Okay.
And you'll have minimums. It'll be like you have to, like if you're going to be a broker, you have to get a license and you have to have so much capital put in that backs your things. And I think it's going to be along the lines of that from the information I have. You're going to be able to do it, but you're going to have to kind of register, and you're going to have to be put into, that there'll be minimums that you can buy, right? So I hate to say this, but it's going to, if you didn't participate in this first round, it's going to be very difficult for the average person to participate in the second round if they want to buy, a lot of currency, right? That's the kind of restrictions I think that's going to be there. Double dipping is a big issue, by the way. Double dipping is absolutely a major issue with the people.
I think, you know what? I think it will wreak havoc if you don't use wisdom.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how you could create enough money, quite frankly. With gold back, how are you going to, where's it all going to come from, right? If you got people, doubling down, as they say in Vegas, right? So,
right. Well, you know what? I really appreciate it, and you guys brought some additional confirmation to me, and forgive me for slightly going back on my word, but I'll say this here. I find the information in this community, it's like a puzzle. There's been these seem to be these guru wars, and one form against another, and one currency that I favor over this versus the other, and they don't know what they're talking about. They're liars. And as I keep listening to this, there's so much information that really is almost the same. And what I mean when I say the same is this is like a puzzle. If me and you stuck our hand in a box and pulled out a different piece of the puzzle, 9 times out of 10, we're not going to connect right away. But as you keep sifting through the pieces, it all comes together. And I'm saying that to say that I actually heard TNT Tony say that about 2 years ago, that the next go-round of currencies, you have to basically have approximately $10 million plus dollars,
I heard that too.
Assets to get in. So it's a trip how all of this is coming back together. Unless you guys have the same exact sources, I don't know. I liken that to be some sort of confirmation. So I appreciate the call, and thanks for the information. And I'll let you guys move on to the next call. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, team. What would you like to do? Because we're almost 2.5 hours. So
yeah, I'm loving this, but I think for the interest of the replay and all that, we get to the point where can people listen for 3 straight hours, right? So, but
it's
I think
lot.
This is. I'm very encouraged by the participation, and this is the whole reason why we're doing this, is to get stuff out and talk about it where you normally maybe you can't in some other places, right, or some other calls. So, but we've always got next week's show.
Exactly.
Yeah. I thought it's been a great call, except I didn't get to use my buzzer on Sean.
You notice I made it. I do look back and I reflect and I make changes. Yep. All right.
It's all about being the conscious, objective observer of our experience.
All right. Okay, let's wrap it up for another show.
So here's what I would just like to say in closing is that you've heard me say this, and this is something I've been bringing forth for several years now. We are in this together, and that we have been very openly discussing and talking about the level of deception, and that we are here to shine the light on that deception and even the insidiousness that has been playing out in the reality that most of us have been basically existing in, not necessarily thriving in. So as we just close out this call, rather than going into a guided visualization and activation, I just would like to leave this with you guys to really engage from this moment forward, knowing that you have found a community, a group of people. If you have resonated with what we have talked about here, if you have felt that the information is expansive for you and even opens your heart, that you allow yourself to engage with that, and that there has been a lot of work that has been done behind the scenes, energetically and even in the 3D putting things together to be able to bring this forth and to even be transitional way shower, shall we say. And so I'm asking for you to engage with your heart's desires, and that as we leave this call and as we move even into this next several hours, because I've gotten some intel sent to me that indicates there's a possibility of things in the next several hours coming into fruition and creating some action.
You got some of that too, huh?
You did what?
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything?
No.
No. Okay, me either. And so really what this is holding the space, because we are the creators of this reality, and that as we hold that energy, the way the steps for creating is that we have it. It's held as a possibility in our heart and in our mind. Vibrationally, the thought and the creation, the electromagnetic energy of the heart creates a field of energy that creates a possibility that then moves into a probability and then moves it into a reality. So I'm just going to say there's several hundred, there's close to 400 people on the call. And that doesn't include, that's just the live. So, and I'm really honored by that. And that the vibration of that kind of number, where we come into a unified field, is so incredibly powerful. And that as you move into the rest of the evening, or if this is a replay for you, the rest of your day, that you hold that grace in your heart and in your mind, that we are on the precipice of this huge transformation and transition, and that you are a very important player. And as a VIP, you're a very important player in this field becoming a level playing field, as well as for the evolution of humanity and the transformation that is necessary in order for us to move from this deception into a much more peaceful existence that is held in integrity and honor and love, actually becoming a very normal conversation and a way of beingness that reaps the benefits rather than the old paradigm, which is the survival of the fittest. So I just want to say thank you for being here. Whoever's wrestling paper.
Sean.
Is that Jennifer?
Sean.
Sean?
No, that's not me. I have no
That's
paper.
weird. Where's that coming from?
Oh, well, maybe the last caller is still open. Let me clear the queue.
Okay. And so that okay, great. Sorry. So just reiterating, just that as we move into this, that we hold that vibration, that we are in this together, that we are a unified field that is very, very powerful. And it's a very activated field. And Sean, thank you for jumping in and being willing to do this. And Jennifer, thank you for being here with us on the board. And that there is a team even behind the scenes that is holding this field. There's a very, very powerful team that has been working on their own up-leveling for some time now, that's live, that's been Skyping with me, that's been giving feedback, and they're here to hold and stabilize this field of energy for this reality to come into fruition. So we could even, with this, what's been just sent in intel in the last couple hours, we could actually see some substantial subtraction from in just even the next 24 hours. And I am going to just suggest that we hold that with grace and ease and heart's desires vibration, that is the reality that we have just anchored. And so it is.
So be it.
Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, with love and honor.
Good night.
I'm going to turn off the recording. Much love, everyone. Bye-bye.
Buildings caught all the attention. The third tower came down, not by any means, but that was when the GCR was completely put on, was taken
demolished,
out of
literally.
reality. Right. It was
right.
It was defeated. So that was the connection with 9/11, and so the GCR really had to be retooled, replanned, leading to where we are now.
Well, and one thing to add to that, and like we keep saying, we're just giving you tidbits right now, and with the one thing just to be aware of also with 9/11 is that there was an announcement. I believe it was Alan Greenspan was set to make an announcement the day of the 9/11 that was going to begin to release monies from different collateral accounts. And this is when the official, what had been set up for many, many, many years, the global abundance for projects for humanity were to begin to be released.
The matrix funds, the world, global settlements, all of that. Yep.
Exactly. Now, one thing I just want to add in here is that we're going to build out on my website, wakingupwithdeb.com, we're going to build out a section. If you go there within the next couple of days, there's already a post for these shows, but we're going to go ahead and build out a section that provides links for places for you to go and listen to different people that I at least, and I think, Sean, you'll add to this as well, and the team that's working around us, links of people that we feel are pretty much like in the know of this whole big picture, and for you to also, you as the listener and the engager, to guide you, at least create a bit of a roadmap to guide you down, because we cannot provide you with all of the information. We're giving you here the tidbits. And this situation on an esoteric spiritual perspective with 9/11 is, this is what my guides told me, that the 2001, this is when the gateways for our ascension were supposed to open. All the different portals leading up through the 13 years that we were coming into 2012. And all of that was dismantled. So 9/11 really did a very, not only to the global community, just in regards to moving us into a vibration of fear and survival and lack, especially lack of money. It's also been a lack of love, too. So there's been a very traumatic experience that has occurred since that one particular event. So the money was meant to be released back then, and it's taken this much time to as Sean was saying, to reestablish and to basically pick up the pieces for all the people that are working at the level and behind the scenes that we're not working at. So Sean, perhaps we now touch upon, because there's a couple things for people to be aware of that I think are important, and that is because this is how I started actually understanding things about the IMF and all the World Bank and all of those things that they don't necessarily teach you in school. These are the kind of things you just have to research and figure out. But we've had now in August of I remember August 2011, the first time I heard about BRICS. So, Sean, you want to touch upon BRICS and what that stands for and the importance of that and and the expansion of now 2 systems behind the scenes?
Yeah, there's the bottom line is that the West, since the inception of modern day banking and finance, the West has controlled everything, right? I mean, the U.S. has been the hub. You only have to look up and understand what the dollar being, one of the largest world reserve currency, going back to the Bretton Woods Agreement right after World.
Hello and welcome to the November 29th, 2015. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, that's the date here. GCR show with Deb and Sean, also known as Awake-In-3D. And we also have Jennifer here supporting us on the board. And so this is our second official show. And we want to, first of all, extend a warm welcome to everybody and appreciation. We are planning to open up the calls much sooner than we did the last time. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get rocking and rolling here. And that is, as we open up the lines, we're going to ask for everybody that as you share the information of who you are, to please only share your first name. And you can share your location, but because this is being recorded, it'll go out to wherever we don't know, and so we just, for the sake of privacy, want to encourage you to maintain some privacy. And then the other thing too is that as we open up the queue for the Q&A, we do not know who is on the other end of that call. So we are just going to ask everyone to be very, not only patient, but also be understanding that this is how it goes when it's live. That there's going to, there's people that we don't know who is there. We don't know what questions are going to be asked or the things that are going to be said. So we're going to ask everyone to be responsible and accountable for your communication, as well as for the engagers and the listeners to be patient with all of that. Okay, so Sean, would you like to add anything to the intro with the housekeeping of all this?
Nope, I think you got it. Okay,
so now just to give a little bit of intro in regards to why we're even doing this call and this show is, and to also just give a bit of an overview of the expansion of where we're intending to go with this. Both Sean and I have been involved in this situation, which is now very, it's like we're referring to it as the GCR RV. I for 5 years. Sean, I think you've been, about 7?
7, yep.
Yeah, 7 years. Okay. So one of the things that is really, really important for people to have some awareness about is that this investment opportunity or this shift of finances or this reset, however you're looking at it, we believe and feel that it's very important for you to be looking at it from different perspectives, and also from a global perspective, that this is not just about currencies that are being revalued and resetting of global infrastructure, that there is a much bigger hand at play here that is really bringing to light the matrix, what I refer to as the enslavement matrix, or the deception, the duality reality, or the deception reality. And what is playing out right now is a very behind-the-scenes double standard and matrix that has been very effectively put in place to keep humanity, and I refer to this also as the designed assault against humanity's awakening, to keep humanity in a very controlled and programmed experience within a construct within this matrix. And that this GCR is the tipping point for us to actually transcend that enslavement matrix. And before we can transcend it, for it to actually be revealed. And this is why one of the reasons that
World War II, where all international affairs are settled in dollars, and that created a hegemony, right? And that was expanded upon, obviously, through the petrodollar. No energy resources can be transferred from one country to another, or transacted, I should say, without using dollars. Everything has to be settled in U.S. dollars. This allows the U.S. system to export dollars and debt and keeps inflation in balance or low here in the U.S., but it's just exported. The debt is exported out into other countries.
Now, can I jump in?
Yep.
Let me just jump in here. I just want to say something to what you're saying. This is really important to understand, this exporting of debt, because this is one of the reasons why the U.S. is very much disliked by many of the people in the countries around the world. We're not, the facade is we're the heroes, and I say we as, people of the U.S., but what the quote-unquote government has done, which is an illegal corporation actually, which we won't get into here, but what they've done is they've really actually manipulated and controlled. They've become the bullies across the planet. And it has created a very detrimental relationship with many of the people in the countries across the world. So, Sean, I just wanted to add that in.
Exactly. And, the bottom line is when and this leads into the IMF and China and Russia, why China is so important right now in this with the renminbi, which I guess we're waiting for tomorrow, huh?
It's a big day right now, big time.
And because, in essence, any emerging economy nation around the world that wanted to get in and play with the big boys in the West, in the financial system, pretty much had to turn over all their natural resources to the West, and particularly to the dollar system. And what would happen is the IMF via the U.S., because the IMF is really run by the United States, the majority of voting power and that type of thing. But people would go in, they are called economic hitmen, and they would go to an emerging nation and make them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they had to sign up for the dollar system. They had to sign up, they had to take out loans to develop their natural resources, whether it's gold, diamonds, oil, natural gas, minerals, agriculture, you name it. And that's how you had to participate. And eventually, whatever they wanted to do in the interest of their own countries would either be decided by powers outside of their country, and that's how the disdain for the Western system led by the U.S. dollar regime became more and more disliked, and as time went on. And this led to the IMF. I think we're going to jump from, say, the middle 2000s now, coming into 2010 with the IMF reforms.
Right.
And as the GCR movement was gaining traction behind the scenes with the powers that be, everyone knows it's coming. Of course, the resistance had to be put up by what I call the bad guys, who do not want a change to a gold-backed currency system, an asset-backed currency system, that want to maintain the status quo with the fiat system the countries saw the change. They wanted to adopt it because they saw freedom in it. That's what the GCR is. It takes the debt slavery not only from from people, but sovereign nations and whatnot, to the hegemony of the dollar and that. So one by one, the emerging nations, which officially called themselves, came to be called BRICS. Well, that was named by J.P. Morgan analysts, but what are known as BRICS, they wanted more and more of voting power in the IMF, more control over their destiny, because the U.S. can just veto anything because they have the majority vote. And so this is the disgruntlement that kept rising higher and higher. And, we don't want to get into the whole Middle East, but the very reason we're in Iraq, we're in Syria, we're in Egypt, we're in all of those nations is really to gain control of the natural resources, make sure we have installed, and make them a part of the dollar fiat.
What I wanted to talk about tonight was to go back in this time machine and only just do a very, very quick overview of some of the history, very quick, and just to touch upon some key points. That
This is based on the fact that a lot of people were asking, right? From the last show, you got a lot of emails and questions, and I think sometimes we all forget that some people are fairly new to this, and when they hear some of the things that are thrown around, they really don't have a perspective or a background. So, yeah, I think this is good because this is our intro to the newbies show, right?
Exactly, and because Sean and I are aware that we and the team that are around us are really here to be transitional, to support in a transitional, in this transition, and I'm going to say transitional way showers. That in this situation with the GCR, that it's very important for people to connect the dots. And I touched upon something in our last show where I was saying, I went down the rabbit hole back in 2010, at the end of 2010 when I got involved with this. And I think it's very, very important, no matter where you are in your knowledge base at this point, to actually go down that rabbit hole. And I'm kind of being fun here, but I was saying, to be smart bunnies. But this rabbit hole is imperative if you are interested in transcending this deception reality and this enslavement matrix. It's actually really important for you to understand and to be able to connect the dots of all of the things that have been going on behind the scenes for a very long time, so that you can actually have the level of discernment that's necessary to navigate through what I actually have been told by my guides is what we're about to experience on the planet are some very, very traumatic and dramatic upheavals. And in order to have the perspective of, in order to have an expanded perspectives of this upheaval, it's actually important to understand what has been hidden and the way that the quote-unquote wool has been pulled over our eyes. And this will support you in having the perspective that as these things are revealed in the mainstream, which so much is not, many of us know much of what is happening is not revealed in the mainstream. But that as that does occur, that we can then be responsible for having an expanded awareness and having perspectives that, okay, this has to happen. This is just an example of a thought process. Okay, I can see how this has to happen in order for ... to actually be revealed and to occur for the betterment of humanity. Okay, so I really wanted to just set the context and the tone because we're going to create the content, we're going to create some the content and the context here, but like we said, we're only going to give you like crumbs at this moment because this is a huge subject. And I know for me, when I started going down this rabbit hole, I spent thousands of hours researching this to understand what the hell was going on and to understand about fiat currencies and things that we're going to touch upon here. So, okay, so Sean, let's get into the time machine part of this.
Okay.
All right. So, why don't, if you wouldn't mind, if you would actually start with the, okay, let me just say one more thing. So one of the important things in this whole timeline of all this is the JFK stuff, and the JFK's, what his intention on this planet was when he was here in physicality. We're not going to go back there, though. Why don't we start for the newbies? Let's start with the dinar, because that really, I think for many of us, that was the kingpin of what started many of us down on this trek.
Okay. Yeah, I think a commonly held perception by people who are trying to connect the dots are that the GCR or the RV, which are commonly used together, started with the Iraqi dinar, right? But we know that a currency reset or an attempt by various leaders across the world, including, most significantly for the U.S. was JFK, in trying to get the world off of the fiat currency system, which is really just a debt-based spiral, right? So the GCR really goes back way before the dinar came on the scene. And the dinar, after it started to become public because of the internet, and many of us are found out about it, whether it's last year, last month, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even some people, it spread really quick. And so the public, as we call it, Dinar Land public, became a part of the overall picture. And I believe it was decided with the architects, I call them the architects of the GCR plan, that the Iraqi dinar, given that so many people were beginning to collect it and hold it, would become a key part of the cornerstone of the global currency reset. And it was decided that the dinar would be a truly gold-backed currency. I believe it is still slated to be 100% asset-backed with not just oil. That's the oil credit thing, but in terms of a currency, being a gold-backed currency, which could be a cornerstone for many other countries around the world to hold dinar treasuries, sovereign treasuries of different countries, to hold dinar as part of their basket of foreign currencies, or what's called FX in the financial world, foreign exchange currencies. And that's how the dinar really came on the scene. But for people who have just really been in the dinar world and focused on the Iraqi dinar or the VND or others, they're really part of the GCR rather than the GCR being a part of the RV, right? So
right.
That so I don't want to get too convoluted here. So that
let's just touch upon the situation with 9/11 and how this ties in.
Yeah, actually, maybe a lot of people don't realize that the original main plan that was really started getting traction with JFK, because he did want to put the United States on a gold standard. Remember, we didn't get off the gold standard just in 1971. That was the official death nail when Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard. Well, he was told to do that. And but before that, since the inception of the Federal Reserve banking system, or what's called the central banking system, which was led by the Fed back in 1913, that was really, we were being weaned off the gold standard in many countries, over that 100 years leading up to now. And 71 was just the official kind of public announcement, hey, we're completely decoupled from any, gold backing of the U.S. dollar in terms of the Treasury, right? And so that is pretty much how this, came about and got us, where we are now. And leading up to 9/11, right before the towers were hit, for anyone that wants to research this, we won't go into the details, but just search on the internet for the third tower, 9/11, the third tower. There were three towers, three whole buildings that came down, and the third tower was actually where all of the computer systems and the currency algorithm systems that were going to establish the U.S. part and perhaps the global part in putting the U.S. back on the gold standard, as well as many other financial corrections in the banking system and things of that nature. That was in tower number 3. It was a smaller building, but it came down while the other two buildings